Hi, I'm here today. I'm Sam Johnson, and I'm here today on behalf of the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program. Today is February 25th, 2021. Do you want to introduce yourself? Maybe your name, major, where you're from, anything?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Angelika Gonzalez. I am currently a second year, hopefully public health major. As you probably know, it is a limited access, so we'll see. And I am originally from Puerto Rico, but spent a lot of time in Texas as well as Central Florida. So probably more Floridian than anything at this point.
Okay. Wow. All right. So, let's go into that. If you want to say a little bit just about your upbringing, you've mentioned many places already. Maybe just kind of your relationship to each of those places, and just kind of what led you to UF in your early life and into going to college.
Yeah, definitely. So, interestingly enough, they all have their place in the story of how I got here. Like I said, born in Puerto Rico. My parents were very young when they had us, got married, but unfortunately, Dad's not in the picture. So, moved to Texas with my sisters, my mom, and yeah, we were there for a while. My mom was kind of involved in school. She worked there. Really love Texas. Still visit every once in a while. I think I identify the most probably with Puerto Rico, just because that's where the cultural identity lies.
Yeah.
Regardless of only having lived there for maybe 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now Florida, Central Florida, a little town called Deltona. My sisters and I were always within the same two schools. We're a year apart, so when one was in middle, the other was in high. And yeah, so that's kind of shaped for the most part why I've wanted to go to UF specifically, being one of the top now 6 public universities. I think I've always had a little bit of flair for challenging myself and also just really setting a high standard for myself, regardless of my mom not having gone to college or not really having necessarily, because my sisters are so close in age, like someone to follow in the sense of what schooling would look like or further education.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that kind of leads me to what, like growing up, what was your relationship with college? What did you like? What was it something that was expected? Was it something kind of what was your family's philosophy on it? What?
Yeah, interestingly enough, my mom was very much college was expected for all 3 of us, which was difficult in the sense of, yes, we know that we needed to do this so that maybe we had a couple like better opportunities than my mom did, but also not knowing how financially we'd be able to really be able to cover 3 like full-time students all within the same span of time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, my mom also, I think thankfully my sisters and I were always on top of our schooling. So I don't know if that's because, you want to bring mom home A's or a 4.0
Yeah.
or whatever the case is. But we were definitely all very studious. And I think we all knew that we were going to go to college. And yeah, it's kind of crazy that 2 years in to think that here I am and, doing well.
Yeah, definitely. Life crazy. Cannot believe. Okay, so then you've grown up, like college is expected.
Mhm.
Like you was UF kind of in your from what you said, it kind of sounds like it was kind of in your frame of reference.
Yes.
Was that kind of what you were shooting for, or what?
Yeah, so I think the whole time that I was in maybe middle school, high school here in Florida, I was like, UF, that's it. And
Mhm.
I think I had a little bit of fear once I actually was in the process of applying for schools. I would start to think, I don't know if I'll get in. Like that's when I kind of broadened my choices a little bit. I applied to USF, UCF, but as soon as I got that acceptance, I was like, yeah, all these years, this is what I wanted. It's scary, it's terrifying, but again, it's very much like I knew that this school would be a rigorous path for me, and I had always wanted to go that way. In high school, I did IB. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Yeah,
IB.
I was an IB kid. Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
You got it.
But so I just wanted to kind of keep that momentum, and like I said, UF was great. I also have always been interested in health, and I knew that as a track for my education. And it's looked very different. I've gone through doctor, I've gone through nurse practitioner, you name it. But regardless, I know that UF is a really great school in the state for that.
Okay, yeah. And so then obviously you have the entrance of the MFOS element after you get accepted. What was that like? What were you surprised? Like what?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I'm sure you probably, maybe your classmates have heard this. I thought it was a scam. I got an email from one of our directors, Richard Blake, incredible staff, all very awesome people. That was like, hey, like, you know, like our deadline was so-and-so back, but you know, you started your application. We really want to like help you out. Like you should definitely look into this. And I was like, well, you know what? Like, I'm just going to go for it. And I was to this day, I think I'm in shock with like, I have not had to worry, thankfully, about a single cost because they do go beyond just tuition. Like, for example, I have Bright Futures also. Okay. And they do cover strictly tuition and then the stipend for books, I believe. But I can also afford an apartment. I can afford groceries, like all of the necessities that I think we forget about when we're like, oh, yay, I'm going to Gainesville.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The thinking it's a scam. I guess that makes sense. Like, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what was your first year like? When, as far as what you were doing, what you got involved with, I guess you can, if you want, take it the route of what it was like transitioning to UF, we can start there, or just in life in your first year here.
Yeah. So I was incredibly overwhelmed, to say the least. There are so many things on campus, so many things off campus. And in high school, I think, you know, likely like IB very much encourages you to be involved on campus. Like a lot of times those students are generally students who are heavily involved. They're president of this club, so-and-so. So going from being heavily involved to like the culture shock of not even knowing what on earth. I had friends that were going to like 20 meetings a week for different things, like insane. I think, so one of my biggest involvement wasn't necessarily like signing up for something, more so again, like the MFOS route. My mentor, we have a mentorship program to where they assign you a mentor, and sometimes, you know, you have a peer mentee. And he did a really great job of like kind of pointing out like, hey, there are certain things that like kind of align with your major and things that don't, that kind of seem to align with other interests that you've expressed to me. So thankfully, that was very cool. I stuck to mostly volunteering. So like in clinics and things like that. I felt most comfortable in that space. And I think there was a little bit of fear knowing like the limited access program. So I was like, you know what, it might be helpful for me to be comfortable now and in this space to kind of set up a good precedent for applications. And also like once I do get admitted into the program, then these are things that I'm going to be doing more regularly also.
Yeah. And you're referring to the public health program, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that you apply, when do you apply for that? How does the timeline of that work?
Gotcha. So I applied, I think it was due, was it February? It might have been like February 1st or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So recently, pretty recently. Yeah. And I'm not positive when we hear back. I want to say it's within the next month or two. Oh my God. So exciting, nerve-wracking. I think my perspective has very much shifted in the sense of my first year here, I very much suffered from imposter syndrome. I'm not sure if you're like familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So had major imposter syndrome. I was comparing myself to like everyone to the left, to the right, behind, in front. I just thought like they're also interested in public health or so-and-so, and they're doing this and I'm not doing this. And even if I do get in, like, I think thankfully now I've talked to counselors. I've definitely been able to take advantage of my resources. I think as much as I sound like a broken record, I really have to credit that to the MFOS program to really encourage me to, find community within the MFOS program itself, but also pushing me to kind of step outside of that and form my own connections, network outside of that. And I think now I'm super confident, super excited. And I think I'm also like in a position where I feel prepared to pivot if for whatever reason I don't get into the program. And I think previously I may have been in a position where I have to shut down and figure out what's next and like feel just knocked down. And I don't feel that way at all, which is really great.
Yeah, that's kind of an amazing attitude to have about it, I think, and like necessary when so much. I guess how there were a lot of, I think, identities, it sounds like, that you were trying to reconcile when you got here and even now. How did you do that? Like how you got, because like I think being an IB kid and being someone that like is achieving, and then I think like, and then did being a first gen student, did that compound with that? Like just like how did you reconcile everything?
That's an awesome question. And I think sometimes like in hindsight, you realize that I that's not how I saw it. I thought like very much of a progression of kind of the same person, but you're right. I think very much like I was this overachieving, like I'm sure you've heard it plenty of times, but like the kid in high school who never had to study on an exam. And then I get here and I take whatever math class or I take chemistry and wow, that was a real wake-up call. I think in regards to being able to kind of deal with maybe not necessarily an identity crisis, but like shifting between, these new attitudes and these new perspectives, I think very much was a process of just really looking back and trying to reflect on myself and not my circumstance, and very much almost putting blinders on and thinking it's not going to look the same for everyone that it is for me. And the second that I stopped doing that, I think, I've come to realize that like this is a very formative period for us. Like we're going from being with our parents or caregivers or whoever that might be for different people, and now we're on our own. Like it's very much, even psychologically, like this is the point in time where our personality changes the most, where we gain the most resilience. And I think I really am encouraged to like take advantage of that. And I think that has helped with struggling with the first gen imposter syndrome, struggling with the big shift in surroundings and all those kinds. I hope that answered your question.
No, it really does. And I mean, I think it's important that you said that, like you are like they're there, but you're also an individual, and it's like you aren't thinking about it, but you are. Like it's interesting and it's strange. So I got like, let's just talk about, like, you've mentioned a lot of things that you've been involved with. What have just been some of your favorite experiences on campus? It can be MFOS related or not. But what have you done that you've really enjoyed being here?
So I have what I kind of call my trifecta. And I've continued to definitely volunteer in local clinics, predominantly in my hometown, thankfully. Not thankfully, unfortunately, COVID is a very real serious thing, but thankfully classes are flexible and I can safely volunteer given the circumstances back home where we have the tools, we have those things, and I can, thankfully really gain experience. It's also, interestingly enough, helped me find my shift in what I want for my career. So as I mentioned previously, I wanted to be a pediatrician. And I, had the struggle of like, that's a lot of school, that's a lot of money. Is it something that I'm really passionate about? And I had to really boil it down to, it's not about the money. It's not about the school. You're capable of those things. Those are things that you can figure out. It was, am I passionate about this? Is this what I want to do? And I kind of had to shift from that. And where I've landed at now is that I'm really passionate about health administration. So kind of not necessarily dealing one-on-one with patients, but more so working to change the system itself. So I come from a low-income neighborhood, a minority neighborhood, and I've seen a lot of friends and family members who haven't been able to receive the care that they deserve, or that, that any human being, I believe, deserves. And I would really love to work from inside the system to start to see a shift in that. And so that's why public health and health administration are where I'm at now. But kind of jumping back to my trifecta for now. I'm also in the GNV for All UF chapter.
Okay.
So I am on the health and transportation team, and the goal of the entire organization is to kind of tackle those disparities within the community, specifically in Gainesville. And so the health and transportation team is kind of, the name kind of is obvious in what it does, but
yeah.
So we kind of have meetings, and we put together like food drives, like supply drives. I've been kind of trying to work on getting a Zoom for maybe minorities who don't speak English or things of that nature, and kind of getting professionals together to explain their options and ways to best take advantage of their resources. And lastly, one that I hold very dearly to my heart is I'm now an MLS Ambassador, which I think is really cool because it's allowed me to step outside of health and healthcare, and really taught me like powerful leadership skills as well as networking skills, and also just given me the opportunity to give back to a program that I feel has, fueled my being here at the University of Florida. And I hope to also one day do that once I have my first full-time job and give back financially, but now I can give back through my service. And I think that that's something that I've really been excited for. And it's kind of showed me that following your passions is more accessible than one may think. I think sometimes when we say follow your passions, you think you have to go change the entire world at once. And realistically speaking, that's not going to happen all the time. I feel like you kind of understand that.
For certain.
So yeah, that's kind of my three main involvements right now.
Okay. And so what do you do as an MFOS ambassador, especially now, I guess? Like, what are your duties in this era? I guess I'm not too familiar with what you do in a normal time, but I guess what are you doing in this current time? We can speak a little bit about.
Well, I'll be honest, I started this last semester towards the end, so I'm not super familiar with what we do outside of the pandemic. But coming up, I'll give you an example, like a real life example. Coming up next week, I will be speaking in front of the UF National Foundation Board. So kind of some of the 100 plus top contributors financially to the University of Florida. And I will be speaking behalf of the MFOS program, of course, kind of just sharing my story as a first-gen student and why I, on behalf of 1,250 other scholars, really take so much from donations and take from this program and what it means to us. So that's one thing that I'm doing. But we also we write letters to donors. We also reach out to incoming students to kind of let them know about the program. Again, like I got my email and I was like, this is a scam. I don't know what's happening. Like, why am I getting these emails? To kind of just assuage those things and bring recognition, bring kind of just a notary to the program so that, other people have access to it. And hopefully, as, ambassadors, we can kind of expand the program. I know that prior to COVID, they would have in-person like lunch meetings and things of that nature with other contributors to kind of, again, like give them an insight. I think it's different when you're talking to like a program director versus students who are currently benefiting from the program itself.
Yeah. So if you're speaking at an event like that, if you are doing that kind of work, kind of what is your most central goal in that? What do you like, what are you trying to get across to donors, and what do you think is kind of the most critical part of that, if that question makes sense?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of a two-part answer. And interestingly enough, like one of my New Year's resolutions this year was to speak with conviction, to not kind of have that like nervousness or like whether it's in front of people or to someone individually. And I think this opportunity kind of almost fell in my lap. They were like, hey, we were thinking about you. We'd love if you do this for us. Like, and I think in part, my goal is to show that a lot of those fears that are stemming from the unknown of what college is and will I be able to be a successful member of the community afterwards, not having an example in terms of a parent or grandparent or cousin who had gone to college previously. And one of the things that I also hope to express is that this isn't just me. It's, again, several other scholars who are very capable, who earn their spot here at the university, who work hard regularly, are super involved. Like, all of these people benefit greatly, and it's worth investing into the futures of students like that, because one day we'll be able to hopefully sit right next to them in these meetings and also contribute into the lives and pour into the lives of other first-generation students. And I just really, of course, maybe I'm a little biased as a first-gen student, but I stand for what MFOS does for others. And I think that's kind of what I hope to convey. So we'll see how this next week goes.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be great. Yeah, there's a lot to think about. And you're giving me a lot to ponder, but I don't know. So let's go into what were the kind of the biggest sources of support for you when being here, whether it's peers or faculty, or just where have you felt really supported in this whole process?
Yeah, I definitely think that's another great question. So one of the first people that come to mind was my RA.
Oh my gosh.
And surprisingly, she was also a first-gen student. Unfortunately, not in the program for whatever reason. I'm not too familiar myself, but she, I don't know, she had the same major as me at the time, which was health science rather than public health. And she was double majoring with Spanish, and I'm currently minoring in Spanish. So I had all the questions for her. I was like, is it manageable? Da, 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 da. So she very much became almost a beacon of pointing me in the right direction, literally helping me do the simplest of things, registering for classes. I remember they did it for me at preview, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that again. Yeah. So she's still a great resource and a great friend for me now. The MFOS office, they probably have seen me cry or gotten distressed emails so many times, but also just been really helpful in any questions that I may have in terms of financial aid or involvement or things of that nature. My family, of course, is incredibly helpful, regardless of not knowing. I think it's important to still have kind of that foundational support that comes from people that you know, and people that, whether it's chosen family or biological family or whatever the case is. And also just peers that have come to me. It's been very difficult during the pandemic, having to, obviously take into account the safety of others and stay as isolated as possible. But we definitely try to get as many Zoom study dates as we can in, phone calls, all kinds of things. So those have really been the backbone of my my time at UF.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. But I guess the other side of that question is, are there places that you felt unsupported? Where have there been things that, I mean, I guess like, have there been challenges, and have there been parts of your experience that were just particularly challenging?
Yeah, I think obviously it's different for everyone, but in my experience, I think sometimes my biggest enemy is me. And I've gone through so many times, so many experiences where I've just been like, you know what, you failed a test, you're not capable of being here. Like, you need to think about, you know, what your next steps are, feeling guilty. Even if I had studied for 5 days on end, taking a day off to do something fun, like all of those things, when in reality, like, it's okay. Like, you need to have grace for yourself. You need to say, like, you know what, I worked hard like this. I'm allowed to relax. I'm allowed to do so. And so that's probably the biggest one. And it's definitely a work in progress. You know, I can sit here and tell you now, like, I'm so great now, like imposter syndrome, you know, shot down, but you still have your days here and there. And I think, yeah, for sure. And I think another huge disadvantage right now, like we're just talking about, was COVID. Like, normally I could hop in a car and drive to the residence hall where my RA friend still works and talk to her. And now, you know, that's not necessarily the case. So I think, yeah, just being remote right now is pretty difficult.
Yeah, it's isolating. And when you're your own enemy, that makes it a lot worse.
Recipe for disaster. Yeah.
Oh no. Okay. So what are your hopes for the MFOS program? Where do you see it going in the next few years? What within it now do you think could be expanded upon, or what would you like to see done with it? What do you think they could do to better serve people? Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good question. So I think definitely expanding the program in the sense of how many students can be enrolled in the program. I believe, and I may be wrong, but it's 300 per class. So there are 300 freshmen right now, 300 sophomores, juniors, seniors, which is really great. So definitely expanding that. And I don't know. I hope I'm, like I said, not too familiar with the extent of what goes on beyond being a scholar, because I just became an ambassador, but I would hope to see even more involvement with alumni. I think that'd be really cool to like connect alumni with current scholars and kind of be able to reconnect in that sense. I think the MFOS program is perfect for that, to really link those people together. So those are the two main things I would think right now.
No, for sure. It's incredible to have a base like that of people. Do you feel that do you feel like MFOS is supported by the university, and I guess in the sense of like with the administration, but also with the student body, and with like, do you feel that MFOS is given the respect and kind of the resources it deserves? Kind of, if you want to speak a little on that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like, it has its own, you know, pros and cons to it. I think in the sense of, is it recognized? Yes, I think it is. I think, you know, we have a first year Florida class specifically for MFOS students, and that was incredibly helpful to me because my MFOS, I guess, is it a peer leader? Yeah. So I stay in contact with her all the time. I texted her the other day about headshots, what's appropriate to wear for headshots, like how do I do my makeup, like, you know, kind of just really making sure that I was prepared for that. Because that's another thing, like my mom, you know, she didn't go to college, so inherently didn't have the most, she wasn't taking headshots for any and I think we also have resources in the sense of the program directors do a great job of hosting things on campus and making sure that, you know, scholars, whether they're ambassadors, mentors, mentees, are all involved in one way or another. I would love to see a little recognition in regards to the rest of the student body, like kind of, you know, having them more aware about it, especially since I'm sure there are so many first-gen students who would qualify for the program that probably slip through the cracks. But in terms of receiving the resources, you know, that we need, I think I haven't had any issues with it personally. You know, like they have an office that is easily accessible. They have, you know, plenty of staff that are it'll send you emails out of nowhere where you're in the middle of like a mental breakdown about an exam or something. Like, hey, like just wanted to check in. And I think especially right now, that's something that's so incredibly helpful. But yeah, definitely, I think, there's always room to grow. And I think having more recognition so that more students can really take advantage of the program, that's like, I can say life-changing. Knowing that I can be in school and not have to worry about being in debt afterwards or struggling with those kinds of things, I think is a true blessing, in the sense of my two other sisters, unfortunately, don't have that opportunity. They have scholarships for, academic performance, but they only go so far, I feel like.
So are your sisters currently in college? You said they're a year apart?
Yes. So we are, calculations, quick math, 19, we're about to be 19, 20, and 21.
Oh my God.
Yes, my younger sister's currently a freshman, I am a sophomore, and my older sister's a junior. Interestingly enough, we're all going to end up graduating at the same time, because I'm right on track to graduate in 4 years. My younger sister was dual enrolled, so she's pretty much going in as a junior, maybe a sophomore with a couple extra credits. And my older sister decided to take a little bit of extra time. So that's interesting. They are in college. It's also just really nice. I think I've been, given the tools to also help them out. And I think that's really great. We'll remind each other about FAFSA. We'll remind each other like, hey, like take advantage of so-and-so. And I've tried very hard to get them to transfer and join in on the MFOS program. But unfortunately, we kind of just all have our own spaces right now.
Are they also, where are they in college? Are they at University of Florida or?
No, so we are a house divided 3 ways.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm at UF, my older sister's at UCF in Orlando, and my younger sister's in Tampa at USF.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, all right. How have y'all's experiences like differed? Like what, like, I guess on it, like more fundamentally, like what have been some differences that you've seen? I guess similarities as well, but those are 3 very different tracks, I think, as you said. So like, what do you think, like, what have y'all all had in common, and then what has been different?
So interestingly enough, regardless of sharing quite literally DNA, we are incredibly different people. And my younger sister is a super genius. My older sister and I give her so much for it, so much just smack for it. And she's doing really well. One of the biggest things I do see her struggling with is, of course, finances. Thankfully, she's not worried about passing a class or anything. My older sister's kind of on the opposite end. She's struggling about both a little bit. So that's kind of, I think, where the commonality lies, like finances and stuff. Unfortunately, or thankfully for me, I guess, unfortunately for them, I again haven't had to worry about having a job, having any of those things, because I feel very secure in that regard. But yeah, I think one cool thing is very much that, like, we are young and we are sharing a lot of experiences, and each school has great things to offer, and I think they're very much where they need to be at this point in time and where they want to be. So the differences kind of just lie where within, I guess, our stresses fall, and those kinds of things. And then the common ground just being like, like we're all tackling this as first generation students, and we don't know what on earth we're doing. We're all also obviously expected to do well, being all, well-performing students in high school and things of that nature. So those are, again, that's, I guess, another big one, kind of the expectations from our mom.
Yeah. Wow. Just, I like hearing your story is really incredible. And your sisters and just the whole thing, like it's, incredible. I mean, we can wrap up. I won't take too much more of your time. But I mean, is there anything else that you just feel about MFOS, about anything, about the future of the world? Like what's important to you right now, and what are you hoping from the future? What are you hoping for from the future? And from the next few years of your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think your comment right before that, when you're like, wow, it's interesting to hear your story. I think giving the opportunity to people like me to be able to feel like, wow, my story is worth sharing. Like this story, is made possible by the opportunities I've been given, I think is really powerful. And I would love for other people to experience that same thing. And I definitely hope, maybe a little bit far reaching, but I definitely hope in the future to, like I said, give back and also just kind of help equip, these first gen students and help equip other minority and things of that, minority communities and things of that nature to really step beyond what they know. Because I think going here was a huge leap for me, and I think the MFOS program is proof that there are resources out there, and we're seeing a huge shift. This was not possible for my grandparents and my great grandparents, and now like I'm setting a precedent for my family, and I'm setting a precedent for families back in my community to say, hey, this is super doable.
Yeah, okay. I do have a question that is tangentially related to UF and everything, but just as a public health major and as someone from your socioeconomic background, your background growing up, what have been some of your observations about the pandemic? What are some things that what have you seen? I'm interested to hear your perspective on it. Because I think we're seeing now so much of these things really coming to the forefront of attention and like of the consciousness of everybody.
Yeah, I think the biggest, most like umbrella thing that I can say is a fear of not being able to have access to testing, to treatments, to financial aid. That's a huge thing. And I think it's incredibly sad that the people close to me and people who I relate to that I may not know, just based on, again, socioeconomic background and things of that nature. It's so sad to me to think like this person feels like, like it's harder for me to survive on a very basic, what do I need to survive? How am I going to get this? My kids, my siblings, my grandparent who may be immunodeficient or whatever the case is. Like my mom, for example, just had a major surgery like 2 days ago, and it was really scary not knowing, like, there's also in healthcare, we see a lot of unfortunate statistics in which Hispanic women, Black women are typically, they go under the radar and then things are undiagnosed, things of that nature. So there's a lot for me to learn, granted. Obviously that's my goal and being a public health major and things like that. But that's my main, what I've kind of noticed, and not that I've noticed it now, but it's definitely heightened now given, this crazy pandemic that we're living in right now. So yeah, hopefully I get to be a part of that shift.
Yeah, hopefully. I think you would change some things for the better. I think your voice in there would be really good. All right. Well, is there anything else you would like to share with me for the sake of this interview? I mean, this by no means will be the end of hearing your voice. Yeah, anything else you would like to say for?
No, I think you did a great job of covering a lot of the bases, and thankfully, these are things that I'm pretty familiar with, so I'm not kind of, at a loss for words or anything. But I do want to say thank you for allowing me to share my story. I think, again, like this is being a first gen student, being a minority, all of these things, I think we're not necessarily always heard, regardless of us screaming, at the top of our lungs, metaphorically, of course. So definitely thank you for allowing me to share my story and speak on behalf of others just like me.
Oh my God, my pleasure. I've enjoyed it so much. Well, Angelika, thank you. Have a great day. And good luck with everything. Good luck with your applications and just best of luck in all you do.
Thank you, and same to you. I hope you have a great rest of your week. We're almost to Friday.
Yeah.